Hi guys, we're in the middle of the longest chapter in 1984, and while I'm not going to have you read the whole thing, before you spend some time looking for some of the key ideas in the book that Winston is reading, I wanted to give you just a little bit of background on why this is the high point of Winston's rebellion, this chapter that we're in the midst of right now. What it means for him and for us to be getting this information now, as opposed to much earlier in the book when we've been asking some of these questions. And then just a little overview of what the book does and doesn't tell him. So, first of all, I want to kind of remind us of where we are. Winston has just worked a lot of overtime. He's at Mr. Charrington's. He starts reading the book and then he stops just with this sense of comfort and safety. So, I would like to think just for a moment about where he is now versus where he was at the beginning of the book. So, he is in a safe place. He's waiting for Julia to come, so he's in the midst of this relationship that is continuing to grow. And he is holding in his hands a book that is going to give him some information about how the world that he lives in works, which is what he has been wondering for the entire book so far. So in many ways, those things coming together, this sense of safety and security, this sense of intimacy with Julia, the information from the book, and the sense of being part of something bigger than himself in that he's getting this book as part of the Brotherhood. This experience right now is speaking to a lot of the things that he has wanted for the entire book. So this is really an important moment for Winston. So he starts reading, then he kind of flips later on. You're going to spend some time in class today looking at some of the key ideas from this chapter on War is Peace. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that right now. But let me take us to a little bit later in the book. So he stops reading. And again, we just have this description of just kind of restfulness and peace, that he feels solitude and safety. It talks about how what the book tells him isn't really anything that's new, but it brings together some of the things that he's been thinking or suspecting and kind of systematizes them. It gives him this coherent story that helps him understand the world that he lives in. And he says the best books he perceived are those that tell you what you know already. So then Julia arrives and he starts reading it out loud. So I want to touch on one point from this chapter, Ignorance is Strength, because it talks about, it paints a picture of three groups of people who live in the world. And it talks about how the people on top, kind of the upper class, the people with power, want to maintain that power. The people who are just below them are focused on becoming the people on top, right? Gaining power and maybe overthrowing the people who are over them. And then the people who are on the bottom, when they have a desire of some sort, it is to get rid of all of these class distinctions and create a society in which everyone is equal. And so the book says that this struggle continues through time, and that what the party did, the party was kind of the middle class, and their achievement was that they overthrew the people in power and they have figured out a way to maintain power. And so the part on Ignorance is Strength talks about, for the party members, their chosen ignorance of the reality of what they're doing. That doublethink, mind control is what enables them to, part of what enables them to stay in power. Okay, so then looking at the very end of the book, where Winston stops reading. So again, the book doesn't tell him anything that's a new revelation, but it assures him that he hasn't been insane. That the way that the questions he's been asking, the things that he's been perceiving, they're actually true things about the world that he lives in. So he gets to a point in the book where the book is saying, here's a question that we haven't addressed yet. Why should human equality be averted? Says, here we reach the central secret, here's the motive of the party, and that's where Winston stops reading and realizes that Julia has fallen asleep. So the one thing that he hasn't learned by the end of the book is why. He now knows more clearly how the party is maintaining control, but he doesn't yet have a clear idea of what their motive is. So again, he says here, hasn't told him anything that he doesn't know. It just systematized the knowledge that he had already. But now he knows better than before that he is not insane. So he feels like he has a sense of truth about how the world works, and that is going to equip him to be part of the rebellion. So again, the three things that I wanted you to take from this are why reading this book is the high point of Winston's rebellion, what he does learn from it, and what he doesn't learn from it. I'm going to ask you some questions about those if you haven't answered them already. The last thing I want to tell you is that this right here, I'm not sure why the ebook does this. This is actually the beginning of chapter 10. So if you are using this ebook for your next reading assignment, if you're looking for a chapter 10, you're not going to find it. So chapter 10 begins on page 274, right after these 5 stars.